Do you want that loaf that comes out perfect every time? Soft, squishy crust, a spring that almost knocks you backwards? Are you tired of guessing what you did right and what you can do differently? I have the answers for you in this tutorial. If you are new to sourdough or you've been doing this a long time, you are in the right place. We're going to go start to finish with a loaf of sourdough bread. So the day before you are going to bake that bread, you take your starter out of the fridge, let it sit on the counter for at least 10 hours. In the evening, you will feed your starter 100 grams of flour and 50 grams of water. Then you're going to give it a good stir, making sure that it's completely mixed. Adjust your rubber band so that it's hitting right at the top of where the starter is sitting. That way you are able to gauge the rise the next morning. Put the lid on, set it on the counter overnight. The next morning, it should be doubled. You will see little air bubbles in the starter, and that is also an indication that the starter is ready. Now we are going to start the process. Set your mixing bowl on the kitchen scale and zero it out. Pour in your 350 grams of lukewarm water and 100 grams of active starter. Once that's in, give it a good mix. You will see little bubbles in the water after you mix this up, and that is perfectly normal. Now you will scoop in your 500 grams of flour, making sure that you are zeroing out the scale before you add each individual ingredient. Then you're going to add in your 10 grams of salt. Now give that a good mix. You will want to get this well combined. I usually start with my whisk, but I end with my hands. The flour that I use to make my bread is the King Arthur bread flour. It has never failed me. So get in there, get it mixed up well. Then you're going to put a towel on top and let it sit on the counter for 1 hour to rest. Then after it's rested for 1 hour, you are going to start your stretch and folds. You will be doing 4 sets with 30-minute rest periods in between. And each set is exactly the same. So we are on our second set. You're going to pull up on the dough, give it a little shake, and lie it back down. And you'll turn the bowl and do that 4 times. Now we are on our third set of stretch and folds. Pulling up, stretching, and lying it back down. Then on our fourth set, this is our fourth and final, you are going to pinch off a little bit of dough, and you are going to place that in a glass jar that has room temperature water inside. So you plop that dough in there, and it is going to sink to the bottom. You're going to take that jar and the dough that's covered and set them side by side on your counter. There's me testing the room temperature versus the water in the jar. So when the dough rises to the top, that tells you that your bulk fermentation is complete. Now we are on to the shaping. Take the dough out of the bowl and plop it onto a dry, clean surface. You can use some flour at this point if you feel it's very sticky. Sometimes wetting your hands with a little water works well also. So what I do is I stretch it out into a rectangle. You will find that your dough is very pliable. It's able to be stretched very easily. And you're going to stretch it out as best you can into a rectangle. And if you notice any little bubbles, it's perfectly fine to go ahead and pop those. So you stretch it out. This helps create surface tension and structural integrity. that lets your dough rise up and not be flat. So you're just going to fold the edges over, reach at the bottom and start rolling it up, tucking those ends under, pulling and rolling, tuck, pull and roll. Then when you get to the end, you're going to form it into a little ball. You're going to put it on your counter and let it rest covered for 30 minutes. And this is a very important step in the process. After the 30 minutes, you're going to repeat that step one more time. And this is your second shaping. And again, your dough is not going to be as pliable because the surface tension is building. So you're going to do your best to shape it into a rectangle, pulling without ripping, putting it into a rectangle, square type shape. And you're going to repeat the same exact steps by pulling your dough over to the middle, and then the other side, pulling it over. And the same exact step of rolling, tucking the ends, and bringing it up into a little ball. So after this is done, I always grab my scraper, and then you're going to do the push and pull method. This continues to help build the surface tension. It creates a stronger outer skin and it forces the loaf to rise upward instead of spreading out flat. So you're pushing and pulling, pushing and pulling. This is a technique that takes some practice. So if you're not real good at it in the beginning, don't be hard on yourself. Then when you're done with the push and pull method, after doing about 8 to 10 of those, you're going to put it in a banneton with a towel that's been dusted with some rice flour. That's the type of rice flour that I use, but I'm sure you can use any type of rice flour that's in your grocery store. So I put that, sprinkle the edges of my towel with that. I put my dough inside the banneton and I cover it with the towel. Then I'm going to put it in the refrigerator overnight, and that is called cold proofing. This technique slows down the yeast to build a deeper sour flavor, firms up the dough for easier scoring, and it will give you a blistered crust. Now it's the next morning. You take your dough out of the fridge. You place your Dutch oven inside the oven and preheat both of them to 450 degrees. And while it's preheating, you are going to put your dough on your silicone bread sling. You're going to dust the top with a little rice flour, and then you're going to score. Scoring your bread is purely for controlling how the loaf expands and looks. It does not change the flavor. So it is important to have a sharp blade for obvious reasons. Now that your oven is preheated to the 450, you're going to take your Dutch oven out and you're going to put your dough on the bread sling inside. Then you're going to place 2 ice cubes behind the handle of the bread sling, and you're going to place 2 behind the other handle. And the steam from those 4 ice cubes are going to help make your crust softer and your spring stronger. So now you're going to put that in the oven, the 450-degree oven, for 30 minutes. Bake with the lid on. Then after 30 minutes, you'll take it off and bake it for 15 until you reach an internal temperature of 200 degrees. Then you'll take the loaf out and you will place it on a wire rack and let it cool for 2 hours. That is also very crucial. Do not cut into your warm loaf of bread. Thank you for following along. If you found this helpful, please like and subscribe. I have plenty more sourdough recipes coming your way. Thank you so much. And until next time, take care.